I'm Maria, and this is the Agile State of Mind. Welcome! Today, I'm feeling all flower power. It's the 19th episode, and I am celebrating today that the channel passed the mark of 1K subscribers. Thank you! What's more, spring is on its way. So we have a lot to celebrate today. That's why today's episode is gonna be in the flower power mode. And we're gonna talk how to relax about Agile, Scrum, and above all, the estimations. I get a lot of questions about estimates. For example, should the team re-estimate stories during the sprint once more it's known? What about the stories half done by the end of the sprint? Should we re-estimate them on the sprint planning? And what about the no estimates movement? The message for today is don't sweat it. And let's see how to do it, and not because you don't care, but because you fully understand what it's all about, and you know that the estimations are just a means to an end, and not an end in itself. Let's go! Today, I'm going to talk about the problems with overthinking and overdoing the estimations. But I'm not going to talk about what relative estimation is and why we tend not to estimate in hours. That gives for a whole new video, and I will probably make it soon. Did you know that the words estimates, estimations, estimate disappeared altogether from the 2020 Scrum Guide? There is not one mention of estimates throughout the whole text. I double-checked. To compare, there were 9 mentions of the word throughout the 2017 Scrum Guide. Another evidence that Scrum Guide is getting less prescriptive. And now we know where all the cutting was made. So just to clarify, estimations, story points, etc., they don't come from Scrum and are not mandatory at all. They come from XP, like user stories, and were adopted by Scrum practitioners. So you don't have to use them, but if you do, it might be useful to understand them better. So why do we estimate? Even as a vivid supporter of the no estimates movement that I am, I find it pretty easy to identify at least 3 reasons behind estimations. Let's see them now. 1. Arrive at a shared understanding. You cannot estimate what you don't know. To give story points to an item, you need to learn about it. You need to get into your curious mode and start asking questions. I used to work with a Kanban team in which we estimated stories. Why on earth would we do that, right? Well, we didn't record those estimations anywhere, but they were a trigger for the conversation. We found that it was the best way to check if we all agree about the effort a given user story needed. Otherwise, it's hard to know if after a brief discussion, we reached a common understanding. You know, it's a great trigger for a conversation because if one person gives a 3 and the other gives an 8, then you directly have a conversation. Why? To learn more about refinement and refining stories, watch my video about refining the refinement. 2. Organize product backlog based on value and effort. Thanks to having estimations in points, t-shirts, or even the hours, you have more information to organize a product backlog. We moved from calling it product backlog prioritization to product backlog organization because we not only consider the priority, but also the effort it takes to accomplish something. You need to check, would you rather have 5 small stories done or 1 big one? However, if the estimates suck, they won't be of much help. But at least they will give you an idea of what's bigger and what's smaller. 3. Plan the upcoming work. Scrum is based on empiricism. We learn, and then we apply the knowledge. Estimates provide us with a way to measure the team's velocity and get data to support our forecasting. It works also for the road mapping purposes. By knowing the team's past capacity, we can forecast when a new feature will be done or how much we can deliver by a given date. Note the deliberate use of the words estimate and forecast. This is not a contract or a guarantee, far from it. And I can't stress it enough. It's a prediction based on a percentage of probability. For example, we can predict with 85% of probability that a given chunk of work can be delivered in 3 sprints. But still, we have this 15% of probability that it will take more. Know your lead time, know your delivery rate, and make informed decisions. Okay, so now we know why we estimate. Let's move on and see some of those frequently asked questions. Shall we re-estimate the stories during the sprint when more is known? Use case. The sprint already started, and the team found out that one story would take considerably more work than planned. Let's start from the beginning. Was the story ready to be added to the sprint? Do we have a definition of ready? Like a list of items we need to have covered before we can add something to the sprint. You can learn more about it in my video Refining the Refinement. That would typically mean that the story has the acceptance criteria defined, it has been refined, so a shared understanding has been achieved, and as a result, it got estimated. Even if the story has been deemed ready by the team before the sprint, we work in a complex environment with a lot of uncertainties. And this use case can happen to a newly formed team, but also to a mature team that works together for some time. To me, the answer to such questions is a big depends. If the team is new and they just start learning about their velocity and how to estimate, go ahead and adjust the estimation. Just keep the record of the previous one. Make a list of those stories that got re-estimated during the sprint and take them to the retrospective. So you can learn what happened. If more was discovered later, could have it been thought before? Were there any parts of the system that the team didn't take into account? Is the testing effort accounted for? Step by step, the teams will learn. Just don't make too much of a big deal out of it. Ask with curiosity and keep an open mind, because it's very easy to go from one extreme to the other. Use case number 2. The sprint ends. There is a story that has 3 of 5 subtasks done. Each one of the subtasks was estimated to 1 story point. So the whole story at the beginning was estimated to 5 story points. The story was considered not done, so it got rolled over to the next sprint. Should the team update the remaining story points or keep the original estimation of 5? My answer here is it's totally up to the team. I worked in both approaches with 2 different teams at the same time, and both worked well. It is just as simple as to change the estimate on the sprint planning. So if the team really feels that that will help them, just do it. If you're not convinced, then don't. What I would advise here is again not to get crazy about the estimations. Think about having some additional metrics in place. At least measure the number of issues done over a given time slot. If you work in 2-week sprint, then measure how many issues you finish every 2 weeks. That's called throughput, and it comes from Kanban. This way, you can compare both metrics and see if they are consistent and which one gives you more predictability. No sweat, no drama. One important thing to say here though is don't lose track of the value. When you focus so much on the estimations, you start delivering story points instead of value. Sometimes the teams are so consumed on the day-to-day work that they lose track of the big picture. I remember a team that decided to track the subtasks instead of stories in their burn down chart. They were really proud of how they are getting the work done. Just to make it clear, I use the naming from Jira, so I use story and subtask. You can of course name it whatever you like. But subtasks themselves don't deliver value, do they? User stories deliver value. If a story is 3/4 done by the end of the sprint, and you focus on whether you should re-estimate, estimate again, or whatever, instead of thinking, if value was delivered to the end customer, we have a problem. So when you're getting to the end of the sprint, think what you can finish rather than starting new stuff that won't be finished anyway. And that's all for today. I hope this video will help you focus on delivering value rather than sweating over the estimates. And think about creating a great product. Don't let estimates, Scrum, or any other process or technique distract you from your mission. And make sure your work has an impact. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.